Ken Campbell,
The Seekers Podcast.
Not a Faladay, more not a Faladay, more not a Faladay. Walkabout, snell spit, day long, lies one, half one, belong, everyone, something, bugger up dead, finish yet, time.
Greetings, Seekers, and Hail Aris.
welcome to Ken Campbell, The Seekers Podcast, hosted by me, Daisy Campbell, Ken's daughter, and David Bramwell.
Daisy, what have you got for us in this episode?
So this is The History of Comedy, Part 1, Ventriloquism, which is the full title of the show, and this is Part 1 of that show.
Now, one of the slight problems we have with this recording is that it's quite a visual show because he's referencing some of the ventriloquist dolls and particularly one which was a miniature version of his head, which, you want to tell the story? You were telling me earlier on about what happened to this, and I never knew.
Well, actually, there's two different heads. So there's one little head, which is the Frank stick that he refers to in the first half, which looks quite like him. It's a little baldy guy with big eyebrows, but quite small, like the size of a fist, the head is, and it just exists on a stick. So that's what he's talking about in the first half.
If the listeners don't know the Nina Conte documentary, Her Master's Voice, then we highly recommend that they go and watch that because it's extraordinary. Yeah. And within that documentary, Nina inherits all of his ventriloquist dolls.
Yeah, no, it was very clear in his will. Everything to do with ventriloquism was to go to Nina.
And at the end of the documentary, she gives away the large
head. That looks like Ken, you know. There was this this rather extraordinary, beautiful, highly mechanized head that really does look like Ken. And at the end of the documentary, she gives this extraordinary head to this young budding ventriloquist who goes on to become one of the finalists in America's Got Talent, using the very same head, the Ken head, that nearly bankrupted him buying that thing. So that's the weird, wonderful ripples of this stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so this is The History of Comedy Part 1, Part 1.
I think you should say The History of Comedy Part 1, Ventriloquism, Part 1.
So this is A History of Comedy Part 1, Ventriloquism, Part 1.
Yes.
Ye hats tell of a ghost dog that runs at the head of the pack. When the long winter nights come on and the wolves follow their meat into the lower valleys, he may be seen running at the head of the pack through the pale moonlight or glimmering borealis, leaping, gigantic above his fellows, his great throat a bellow, as he sings a song of the younger world, which is the song of the pack. And that's the last paragraph of Jack London's Call of the Wild. Why have I recited it? I'll tell you. Because these are the stars of a thing I'm working on at the moment.
Indicating my fine dogs.
Which is a perambulatory, ventriloquial, canine production of Jack London's Call of the Wild. I'll just hit you up there. He's very good, Maxine. Miss Chins, I'm just going to hit you up here. You get to see the nice lady in a moment. That's what he's looking forward to. First of all, I just would like to introduce you to the mother of these two. This is Gertie. She's quite a fine performer, but she's better out on the marshes, Walthamstow Marsh, where I'm planning this production. She's a sensitive actress. She's kind of into sadness. She loves balls, for example, but what she really wants to do with a treasured ball is to take it to just outside the rowing club and let it roll down the slope and into the River Lee and away and be sad. Anyway, this is Gertie. She's what you'd call of the ferine strain. Not exactly feral, but ferine. And she plays the wolf in the production, amongst other parts. Thank you, Jessica. This here is Mr. Chins, magnificent-looking animal, and thus, due to his looks, has got the part of Buck, the judge's dog. I don't know the story of Call of the Wild. It's about how Buck, the judge's dog, gets kidnapped in the 1900s and then taken from California out to the Arctic to become a sledge animal. And he gets fucked off with it and joins the wolves. Anyway, he's the most similar in looks, and a lovely dog. I was off to with Jessica. Now, the modicum of real talent probably lies with this guy, which is Maxie. I'll come to it in a moment, but he actually knows a fragment of the Song of the Younger World, as mentioned in Call of the Wild. But he's got another little thing he wants to show you. Here you are, Jessica. The Younger World. What do you got to remember when Jack London was writing this thing? He just read Darwin. And at the last line is, and he sings a song of the younger world, which is the song of the pack. What London's talking about there by younger world is a world that precedes the wolf, right? It's an incredible work, I think, The Call of the Wild, because it kind of makes you nostalgic for a time before man. Anyway, sings a song. Yeah, honest, okay. We wanted to show you how we cope with the sledging scenes in this production. Maxie, this is a Sacco dog cart from Norway here. I haven't got the three of them on it, because you've got three of them on it. Man, you've got to hold on to your hat. Okay, are you ready now? There's a nice lady. Make for the nice lady there. Okay, Gee, haw, march it away.
And the dogs pull the dog cart across the stage.
Don't worry about the dogs. They might come on again at the end. But they have a wonderful, wonderful evening with the lovely Jessica. At the moment in the production, I ventriloquise the thoughts and dialogue of the dogs. At the end of it, it's quite... At the end of the production, I will be doing a demonstration of ubiquitaricism, which is one of the variants of ventriloquism. Ubiquitaricism is where you attempt to make your voice come from everywhere. You know, not from like a little dummy, but from the everywhere. And there's a wonderful part on Walthamstow Marsh is the railway bridge that goes over. And one of the arches there, I can do it, it's like a... The ye-hats tell of a ghost dog that runs at the head of the pack. The long winter nights come on, and the blues, but the thoughts and the dialogue of the dogs, I ventriloquise at the moment, but I have a dream that they may be able to master just a few lines themselves. So it's subsequent to last year, at last year's World Ventriloquism Conference in Kentucky, I acquired this little character. It was in the dealer's room.
Now showing a wooden head on a stick that looks rather like me.
It's quite an unusual figure, this. For one reason, note that the eyes don't cross on it. Usually with, they're called these things, well, some people call them dummies. Be very careful about doing that in America. They get upset, some of them, right? You call them ventriloquial figures or knee pals, then you're sick. It takes an hour or so to be able to say knee pal, you know. Anyway, yeah, knee pal, yeah, knee pal. Notice the eyes don't cross. Usually on ventriloquial figures, the eyes will cross. That's so that when you band them around, it looks like they're looking at you. Not this guy, look. He's kind of introspective. He's kind of... not seeing it at all. Also, it's finished. See what I mean? It's not actually what you could put it in a body, but it's not waiting for a body. And this was carved, evidently, by the late Frank Coates. Nothing eerie about this. It was shortly before he became late. He did it. But Frank, having snuffed it, evidently what happened was his accountant went into his garage and kind of seemed to have helped himself to anything that was knocking about there. And he was manning the dealer's table, selling off the remnants of Frank Coates' collection. And I said to the accountant, what is this? And he said, it's a shaman stick. I said, wow, a shaman stick, right? I said, did Frank have dogs? He said, yeah, he had an old dog that died of grief shortly after Frank did. Right, anyway, the thing seems to want me to buy it for some reason. And the thing is, I've seen one of these things before. This was, it was about 10 years ago. when I was touring around with the science fiction author Brian Aldiss, and we were reading bits and pieces of Brian's science fictional stuff to the fans. And when we were in Nottinghamshire, we passed this rather nice-looking pub in the hillside out of the way. So we'd go back there after we'd done a show, which we did. In there was an old miner, a retired miner, and he had one of these things. It wasn't quite like this because his looked like him. I said to the miner, I said, what is that? And the miner said, well, you see, I'm a shy man. And I just thought he was, you know, like telling me that he was a very shy person, but he found that he could cope if he had one of these. And anyway, so Nottinghamshire shy man also had with him a dog. It was a big old dog. I think it may once have been a Labrador. And the name of the beast was Dustbin, or he pronounced it Dustbin. And he started to address the dog through his shy man stick. And he was going, so, Duskin, will you be telling us a story tonight, Duskin? Will you be telling us a story? Is it a story you'll be getting from your Duskin? That kind of stuff went on for some time all day. In fact, it went on for about an hour. It was quite amusing to begin with, but then Brian and I decided to take around the place a bit. And, but then I spotted that the dog had now rolled over on its stomach, and the miner was now digging into the dog's stomach with his boots. He was going, so, will it be a story tonight, Duskin? Will you be getting a story tonight from your Duskin? Like that. And of a sudden, the dog... You know what I mean? It wasn't a short story, this. I don't know. You know, like when a Welsh relative has had a stroke. Or... you can kind of understand it as well as that. Well, maybe it's a bit like someone else's Welsh relative had had a stroke, but you kind of follow it. Well, he was saying, Brian, what do you think of that? He started saying it's extraordinary. Because it seemed to me he was handling at least 3 different story threads there. He said it's almost perfect 3-act structure as well. In Kentucky, I came back very inspired. I got inspired to be now Britain's answer to William Shakespeare Burger. William Shakespeare Burger is pictured there in the centre, a little kind of banner thing here. William Shakespeare Burger. William Shakespeare Burger was the son of Geezer Burger, a German-American actor, and he was born in the 1800s, late 1800s. As a lad, he showed a lot of promise as a ventriloquist. But then he joined the Cincinnati Tile Works. He did very well there. He rose to be president. But then after 39 years, when he retired, he decided to get back to ventriloquism. And he reckoned he was a bit old to be a pro now, a bit rusty. But he wrote to every ventriloquist in the world, you know, and begged for memorabilia, posters, all that kind of stuff. And he started to buy ventriloquial figures, or dummies. We'll call them dummies tonight. Because we're here, aren't we? Who cares? And he started to collect dummies, and he got very well known on the ventriloquial circuit, and people were always calling in. If they were in and around Cincinnati, Kentucky way, they would call in and see William Shakespeare Burger. And then a few started to do, in their wills, started to leave their dummies to William Shakespeare Burger. William Shakespeare Burger lived to be 99, and he outlived all his children, and he left his money in trust that his house should be Vent Haven. That this is where all dummies may go and rest. And the collection now is incredible. Several hundred are there at Vent Haven, and that's why they hold the ventriloquism conference in Kentucky. It's not held in his house. It's, there was 500 people, 500 ventriloquists at the do. In Vent Haven, I got to know a bit more, some stuff I was hazy about. So I used to know quite a lot about ventriloquism. In fact, I mean, in 1961, I did a brilliant ventriloquial show, but then I haven't had anything to do with it ever since, really, or until now. Anyway, in Vent Haven, I came across some little bits of information. There's a picture there of Herbert Dexter, that's the geezer in the middle, Herbert Dexter, and his I had a big knee pal, that a bit. Charlie, and that's Sally Osman, the showgirl Sally Osman, that he was married to until she sued for divorce. And she was quite happy with her husband, Herbert Dexter. He was fine. It was Charlie. Charlie apparently was fearfully rude, and also had been given a much bigger wardrobe budget than she had. Moving along there, the man is very famous. His face is still famous anyway in the States. And that's Paul Winchell, known there as Winch, and his pal Jerry Mahoney. Now they had a huge hit in the very early 50s with the Paul Winchell, Jerry Mahoney show on television there, and the early 50s. And then he was getting on a bit, Paul Winchell, in the 70s, but as luck seemed to have it, it was the time of video. And he owned the rights and he owned the master tapes, which were held by KTTV, and he asked for them so that he could make videos of them, but they refused to give them to him. And he kept asking and wrote a lawyer's letter or two, and KTTV got so pissed off they destroyed the master tape, they erased it. It now went into litigation and for 17 years. And then as a very old man, Paul Winchell got his day in court. And nobody knew quite what to make of this shambling old figure. He taught himself ventriloquism as a lad when he had polio. He taught it himself in a hospital bed. His legs are really gone now. And he hobbled into the court. But then he opened a box. And he pulled out Jerry Mahoney. And Jerry Mahoney hadn't aged at all. And Jerry Mahoney kind of looked around, like you would if you'd been in a box for 10 years. And Jerry Mahoney spotted a relative of his in court, which was the judge's wooden gavel. And suddenly the audience knew what this case was about. What KTTV had done was they had erased their childhoods. And this was declared the grossest act of cultural vandalism in American history. And Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney were awarded $14.8 million. So they didn't want for a couple of bob for the last 3 months of Paul Winchell. Jerry Mahoney is a part of the Hall of Fame in Van Haven. Let's move over there. I'd like to I think, Britain, you've got to start to know who this guy was. This is Edgar Bergen. And in the ventriloquist world, he was the biggest thing we've had this century. Not that he was actually very good at not moving his lips. He was not hopeless at that, but he was incredible at making Charlie McCarthy alive. And Charlie McCarthy, for 56 years, like just William in a way, do you know what I mean? Is the same age for Americans through 56 years. When it's the war, he joins up, like that. He goes through everything. That's Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. I was reading about the last performance of Edgar Bergen. I think it was in 1976 in Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas. And it was kind of like during that show that Edgar Bergen decided that this was his last one. And at the end of it, he said to the assembly, he said, well, ladies and gentlemen, there's, I suppose a time comes when things have to be put away. He said, that was my last show, and glad it was, enjoyed it so much. It's now time for me to pack away my jokes and my friends, I think, and see what else is going for me out in the world now. And he went back to the hotel in Las Vegas and died in bed. In one of the reports it says that he died alone in his bed, but of course the ventriloquists know that wasn't so. He died in bed with those he loved the most. He died in bed with Charlie McCarthy, Mortimer Snerd and Effie Clinker. Over there, look, there's a head. You see that? That is actually all it looks like when you're in there, is a head on a stick, a real head on a stick, and it's the reason some sensitive people don't go a second time to Vent Haven. It's no variation of Sammy or the Lydia Dreams head. The Lydia Dreams Act was a British act in about 1902, and it used to begin with a bit of cinema. It was a road accident footage And then you cut to live action. And in the bed was the, you're treated to the last 6 or 7 minutes of the life of the road accident victim, as looked after by Nurse Lydia Dreams, right? And there's a kill at the end because he wouldn't have realised that the figure dying in the bed was in fact a ventriloquial figure. Rather, you would have had no idea that Nurse Lydia Dreams was played by this geezer Walter Lambert. Anyway, underneath, it's kind of, you know, it's got some details about all these things in Vent Haven, and underneath that one, a little caption which says, human teeth. I tell you, it looks like human eyes as well. It doesn't look like human eyes, they look too alive to be human eyes. Anyway, there's just a bit of a snag. I came to realise this idea that I'd be Britain's answer to William Shakespeare Burger. Sadly, we've kind of lost the art in Britain. Like, I mean, they're amassing, what, 500 turn up at their conference. And, yeah, I don't know, would we get 5? Would we get 2? I wouldn't know. So, part of my idea in doing this little evening is to actually encourage people. I was sitting next to a 90-year-old man at the conference, and I said to him, how long have you been doing this? He said, I haven't started yet, but I've always fancied it. But I'm particularly keen to encourage old people. You know, I've always fancied it. Get on, particularly old people, because I want to start the ball rolling with people leaving these things to me in their wills. And I can tell you how I mean, to the extent I did, got into ventriloquism, and that was at school. I mean, I had the luck to be at school with these 2 guys, the Plashwits. We had 2 Plashwits. We used to call them the greater and the lesser Plashwit. My particular mate was Neville, the lesser Plashwit, and they were the sons of archaeological, anthropological espionage parents. And they'd been brought up in Borneo and Island Malakula in the South Pacific. And I meant to tell you something about their upbringing. Attack it carefully and obliquely. You see this picture? This picture is called Old Longings. It speaks of something which is so rarely spoken about, and I'm going to speak about it tonight, right? This is the practice of having a nurse dog for your child. What I mean is your very young child, you know, from a baby. You don't need nappies and all that stuff. Not if you've got one of these large, soft-mouthed dogs. They will clean with enthusiasm. Both the Plashwit boys, they don't nurse pigs apparently out in Borneo. I remember being when I was round at their house, they got this little sister. She was less than 1 year old at that time, little Nina. I remember seeing her little legs in the air as she's being licked, slopped out and roughed by the marvellous large Newfoundland dog they had called Joey, you know, pretty clean out of the truck end and Cupid's claw stuff. I mentioned it to my mother. She didn't look a bit shocked. She said, well, you remember Tim, don't you? It can lead to odd behaviour in later life. For example, little Nina Plashwit, as she grew up, when she was 20, she got done by the RSPCA for debauching dogs. And shortly after that, she left the country. It was off to Australia, where she joined the dingo chapter of the Radical Dyke Bikers. And off grandly to the Arctic, particularly to Labrador, where she was to help with the rehabilitation of Eskimo gas and glue sniffers. Going from Gig of Mercy to Gig of Mercy, courtesy of a team of 19 Inuit dogs pulling her sledge. These Inuit dogs, man, they are... Well, I mean, the reason they have huskies and malamutes is because these Inuit dogs, they're kind of a breed that precedes the wolf, you know. And in the summer, what I do with the Inuit dogs is, nobody wants to know, you put them on an uninhabited island for the summer. And there was a case a couple of years ago where some visitors or something. They boated out to one of these uninhabited islands to pick berries. And they did pick quite an amount of berries until the dogs spotted them and wandered over and ate them. Not the berries. The polar bears, you knew, did you? Polar bears hitch lifts on icebergs. What they do is they ride along the mainland on icebergs, you know what I mean, out to sea. They see a little place they fancy and they swim in. And there was a case where a polar bear went into the little town of Nain in Labrador, and it was a hell of a pest, this polar bear. It was frightening old Eskimo ladies when they came out of the bingo. And the problem is you can't just shoot them these days, you know, because of Bridget Bardot. And you got to dart them or something, and then you know, get an aeroplane and dump them back in the sea. They dump them near the French islands of Saint-Pierre and Miquelon for something. But the thing was, this polar bear had got hooked on the chips there. That's why he loved it in Nain. He loved the chips. And they got the official trapper along, and he was lacing his traps with blubber and mousse and stuff. And they said, well, it's not going to do any good, you know, because he only likes chips now. But it was beneath his dignity to put chips in his traps. So he carried on with his blubber and stuff, and it was no use. OK, he said, OK, Nain, get frying. And they were frying up in the in a rehabilitation centre, and they set light to it with a chip fire, half of it burnt down. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, light. How I got into ventriloquism business. Right, it's courtesy really of Neville Plashwit. You see, when I was at school, we were taught by the war mad. The staff were very dangerous people. And obviously, so the kids had to have a secret, we had to have a secret language. Luckily, the Plashwits spoke pidgin. They spoke the Melanesian pidgin of the South Sea Islands, and it's a very simple language, and it only takes an afternoon to learn it. It's got no grammar or anything, and that was fine for us. That was our secret language. It go like this, for example. Go, you, me too, fella. Go puff 'em, one woody me gas. Long, narrow side, blong will house. Yeah? I mean, how about you and I go and have a woodbine behind the bike shed? That's funny, kind of thing. Yeah, anyway, that's what that was our secret language. But, and this is it. But anyway, now this is how I got into ventriloquism, you see, because Neville was the sort of guy you listened to. I mean, man, his rite of passage into manhood. I mean, I'd heard the phrase "rite of passage into manhood." I just thought it was a kind of, you know, flowery way of saying, you know, up to a certain point in your life you couldn't achieve spermatozoons, and then look, well, you could. And I wasn't aware that actually sometimes people kind of organise some kind of do regarding it. Anyway, this was Neville Plashwit's too, and we became aware of it on a cross-country run, because there was a whole bunch of us who didn't hold with cross-country running at all. But you had to begin it, otherwise you'd have been killed by the staff. But you had to begin it, but then you could hide in bushes or in ditches and that till the keen mass got by and normally Neville would have been with us, but he wasn't on this occasion. It turned out it was due to his rite of passage into manhood. And anyway, and here comes Neville. He's puffed around. They've gone around the whole 4 miles, and he's got his mouth in a curious way. Like a bit of string coming out of his mouth there. And as he passed us, we noticed something we'd not noticed before, that he got these ribbons of stud marks down the backs of his legs, you know? Those are movie brown stud marks, all part of his rite of passage into manhood. What he'd been doing was he'd been keeping a mouse alive for 6 months by feeding it nothing except bits of himself. And now he was nearing his the climax, I suppose, of his rite of passage, and he'd now cared for that little animal in his mouth, right, around the whole 4 miles of the track. He got that, the thing was fine. And he gave it another little meal of himself. Then he put it back in his mouth, like that, and he bathed it in sound. but it swallowed it. And then the music changed. And he pulls it up, regurgitated it in pellet form, you know, like owls. He wrapped the pellet in a fairly clean handkerchief and then stuffed it between the flanges of a lukewarm radiator for the period of 1 lunar month. He then circumcised himself with heated, sharpened cake tongs, inserting into the wound slivers and shards of desiccated mouse pellet. A few weeks later, when his enterprise had settled down, he showed us the result. And it certainly had given it a handsome, toasted appearance. Neville was the kind of guy you listened to. Neville informed us that the way we were speaking pidgin was wrong. Anyway, the way we were speaking pidgin was utterly nothing to do with the way they speak it, for example, in Malakula, right? In Malakula, they've got a whole different mode of speaking, right? What you need to do, you need to go on a journey now into your mouths, okay? Now, stick your tongues behind your teeth. All right, behind the top set, if you're lucky enough to possess it. And pull the tongue backwards. You'll be crossing over a little ridge. You'll be crossing the ridge there. That is called the alveolar ridge. The alveolar ridge. All right, back up it, and you're on the hard palate. Right, the bony bit. Hard palate. All right? And you're in the soft palate. That's soft stuff, the soft palate. Those are the palatine arches. That's the uvula there. Palatine arches. Uvula. Okay? Well, now, in British speech, what we are using as our sounding board is the hard palate. And by sounding board, I mean exactly this. Right? If you were to get some strings and pull them and give them a bit of a pluck, you would get a little bit of a thwacky noise, but it's not until, you know, you've got a sounding board, a sounding box, ideally, you know, like a guitar box, a cello box or something like that, that you're going to get the real sounds. And that's our sounding board, our hard palate. In Britain, we don't use the soft palate. That's for French people. Okay? Now, I now want you to hum. I want everyone to hum. Now, when you hum, notice that your lips are vibrating. Nothing clever about that, right? They will. Notice that your nose is vibrating. You can make it vibrate even more. You can make it vibrate so you'll get a little tickle in it. Now make your Adam's apple vibrate. It will. It already was, but you can go for it now. Come on, Kenneth Williams, you spent hours doing this. Okay, now I'm now going to get you to vibrate something which few people in Britain have ever thought of vibrating. This is your ears, yeah? Do look around when we try this exercise. The statistic is this, that 1 in 1,000 the ears are going to flap a bit. So let's go up and down right now. Watch around, right, see if this happens. But really what I mean by vibrating your ears is vibrating the tubings in there, the inner. Stuff that, and it'll tickle. Maybe you've got to tickle in the nose, you're going to tickle like that in the ears if you get it right. And to get that, you've got to... Here's a way in. You kind of impersonate an insect. You put your tongue on your alveolar ridges. Tongues on alveolar ridges, please. And... you can do that. Try to get your ears to tickle. You can dial it up if you can get in the... Oh, she's done. Okay, good. Now, we're now moving you into the Malaculan mode of talking, right? Okay? Because they don't use the hard palate as their sounding board. This is the whole bit, right? They're using the cranium. This is something like a tracheic resonance is what they're using, right? And it's worth knowing this. I mean, there's a lot of people do this, like most Melanesians do it. Samoans, Maoris, Aboriginals. That's how they get their voices. So instead of going, you, me, too, fella, go puff and one woody, long, will house. Right? And you, me, too, fella, go puff and one woody. And your ears are tickling. The Malaculans and the Maoris and co, they never thought otherwise than this. That when you speak, your ears should tickle. They never thought otherwise. sometimes people go, oh dear, you know. And they go, dear, oh dear. They say, well, what about poor deaf Malacoolans then? You know, they won't be able to lip read. If you go, you don't have to worry. There aren't any deaf Malacoolans. Here, especially in Britain, we get a lot of deafness, and that's because we speak at the front, only using that as our sounding board. Get a hell of a build-up of earwax. They don't get any. They can't break the Neville said earwax is unknown in Malacoola. You know, if you can collect enough of it, and he said, I don't mean a lot, you know, about the size of a big rub pot. He said it'd be valuable there. You'd be able to swap it for a pig or something. Anyway, we adopted the Malacoolan mode naturally as our secret language then. Once you've done that, you're really almost at ventriloquism, do you see? And there used to be an advert in the Hotspur comic. Boys, learn to throw your voice. Fool your teacher, policemen, peddlers. Into the desk, into boxes. Oh, that £0.50 it was, 2 and 6. And you'd get this Ventrilo gadget and a 32-page booklet on how to be a ventriloquist. Naturally, we sent off. The Ventrilo gadget wasn't actually a lot of excitement. What it was, I think, after it had been round a few people, it was no excitement. But it was kind of, I think, a Punch and Judy man's swazzle. There's a way of making a punchy voice with a sort of whistly thing. Probably that's what it was. But the 32-page booklet, oh, what a treasure! And the library caught fire, oh, that's the thing you'd say. This really told us some things, and told us, you know, like where else to look and all. From the 32-page booklet, we learned this, that the greatest ventriloquists in the world today are the Eskimos, the Zulus, and the Maoris. That the very first ventriloquist ever, whose name we know, is 4,500 years ago, and it was a pygmy. And his name was Bezo. And he was owned by an ancient Egyptian pharaoh. And it still exists, the letter that the pharaoh wrote. The pharaoh wrote this letter when he was 9 years old. He was already pharaoh, I believe, right? And he's writing this letter to Harkhuf, a military expansionist in the 6th dynasty of the pharaohs. He writes, "Come north to the palace at once. Make haste and bring with you the funny pygmy whom you brought from the land of the horizon dwellers, who does the dances of the gods. When he goes with you into the ship, place worthy men around him on deck, lest he fall into the water. When he sleeps, surround him with worthy men. In his tent, inspect him 10 times a night. My Majesty wishes to see this funny pygmy more than all the gems and treasures of the minelands." Sorry. Anyway, technically, what you want to know about Bezo, incidentally, was so popular in ancient Egypt that he became a god, the god Bes, B-E-S. And so that figure there is actually of the god form of it. If you start to get interested in ancient Egyptian art, you'll know that everything pretty much is in profile, except sometimes there's a little fella looking at you. That's Bezo, or Bes, the god form that comes later, you see. If you really want to know the proper terms for things, he was not a ventriloquist. He was a gastromancer. That was the form that ventriloquism had in ancient Egypt, and it's quite lovely. Ancient Egyptians, first of all, they, like we think, I think, at least I think we think, I don't know what we think, I don't know, but I think that what we think is that spirits, you know what I mean? Spirits, if they exist at all, are kind of there, right? Well, the ancient Egyptians knew where they were. They're down there, and they're all down there. Whatever they are, they're down there. And if you moved into a moved house, right, obviously in this house there's going to be spirits that are there, spirits of departed ones, you know, all kinds of stuff, demons, fairies, all kinds of stuff. Well, you want to know what's in there, don't you? So what you do is you call in the gastromancer. And the gastromancers were coming, they kind of had this kind of walk, the gastromancers, right? And they're very, very sensitive in their bodies, right? Gastromancers. And they can sense any emanations coming up, right? And then if they got one, then it can be in your stomach, you see? So you'd have to put your head, to hear what you've got, you put your head to my stomach, you see. And then a chat to you, you see, and you can see whether you liked it or not. If you liked it, no problem, you got it back. But if you didn't want it, you go unless it's off up the road. It's quite good. It was therefore, it was ancient Egyptian housewarming. It was a regular thing. And gastromancy continued. I mean, gastromancy was certainly current in Britain up to 1840 or something, because Henry Mayhew visited the old gastromancer of Peckham and explained his workload. Been a great man. In essence, the terms are quite intriguing. He says, the whole enterprise is your bumbo, these are your cakes. Between your cakes is the binky. Just up at the binky is the tush or patootie, also known as the grumper. And 'tis the grumper that does the dowsing. The tricksy bit of uploading the spirit of a departed one, demon, fairy, etc., is done by backdoor trumpet inhale. Chuff or cat pipe up and worker up the loon pipe, well clear of the labonza. Keep her sweet and by she'll talk. Keep her sweet, mind, because a narky sprite will prompt a beef tea blowback. Gastromancy. It was gastromancy mainly which tickled us at school. We got into everything, and all that, and into the there's a form of ventriloquism that's really, really close range. It's funny enough, it's close range with people, but it's called distant ventriloquism, and it's where you try and do the voice of somebody half a mile away. You know, I was voice like that. And I mean, to really get those little voices, what you have to do is you have to imagine or really feel that you're picking up a weight that's far too heavy for you. You go. But you have to, older people, you can skip that bit. You better just keep it with the dummy. Right, so let's grapple with it. Whether it's gastromancy, ubiquitarianism, or polyphony is the way you want to go. You've got to have some ability. I mean, Edgar Bergen the Great, he did have some ability at not moving his lips. So let's launch into that. How to do it now. Neville's sister Nina, when she got a little bit older, when she was about 7 or 8, she was a really, really good ventriloquist, that little girl. And she came up with a sentence which hits every difficulty in the book for the ventriloquist. Like vis-a-vis moving your lips, I'm talking about. Because actually most of the letters of the alphabet you can say really quite easily without moving your lips, but some are killers to attempt. So try and learn this sentence now. Nina's little sentence for a test. Who dared to put wet fruit bat turd in our dead mummy's bed? Was that you, Verity? Simple sentence, let's hear everyone say it. Now, while you say it, right, feel how much your lips will be moving, right? Who dared to put... Come on. Who dared to put wet fruit bat turd in our dead mummy's bed? Was that you, Verity? Okay, let's go through. Let's see how we do. As soon as everyone's through, we've got a few test people up here, and as soon as we're really going, we'll move on. Okay. Who dared to? Who dared to? Everybody should be able to say who dared to without moving their lips. There's nothing difficult here. No difficulty with it at all. Who dared to? Everyone, who dared to? It's not easy. Put. Who dared to? Put. Right, this is what's called a labial plosive. It's a lip explosion. Who dared to? Put. What you have to have is a letter substitute. Here's a good one. A K. Now, here's how you're making a K, usually, right? You hump your tongue at the back, and the hump of the tongue hits the back of the hard palate. K, right? What I want you to do is to attempt to hump the tongue into the French section, into the soft palate, and then send the noise through your nose, right? Because the soft section will give you a kind of lippy sound. Quite a beefy bloke. Go easy, yeah. Who dared to put? Who dared to put? That'll do us. Who dared to put? Have a shot. Who dared to put? Wet. Notice lips on that. Wet, right? What. The sound what. The phoneme what. Right? Imagine that it's spelt, that little sound, H-U-H hyphen double O. Like, huh-oo. So instead of going what, you go huh-oo. Who dared to put? Huh-oo. Wet. Fruit, right? Fruit. That's easy. It's just a TH, right? It's a TH, but don't stick your tongue through your teeth when you say the TH. No necessity to do that. Who did fruit? Bat. No, what you want is a G, though. But in the soft bit, if you can do it through the nose. Who did fruit? Turd is easy. Turd, you're now dead. Easy, on holiday there. Who did turd, you're now dead. Mummy, not easy. Mummy, you want the NG sound of singing. Who did Here's a tip. If you want to be practicing this, but don't want to, call too much attention to yourself, all you've got to do is go to Ilford. Okay, one's through now. Once they're through, doing your best not to move your lips, remembering all your substitutes. Okay, Justin, they're not too bad. None of us good at Saturday, but they're not bad. I have to deal now with going through the wall. When I say going through a wall, I don't mean like a brick wall or something like that. I'm talking about a wall in your head. I assume we're born with it, and I would imagine everyone here has got one probably intact. Right? There's a wall in your mind, in your brain, in your head or something, right? But you can bust the thing. And it's quite interesting if you do bust it down. It's quite a palaver to do so, and I'll tell you how it works. But you'll see that actually pretty much everything I'm saying tonight actually has to do with ventriloquism. You can't I see what you're doing. Yeah. Anyway, through the wall now. Just trust me. Now, I've been through the wall twice, as a matter of fact, but I'm only going to deal tonight with the first occasion, which was in the Hainault Forest Sea Scout hut, the summer term of 1955. And the way it came about was this. We got interested in speech. A little bunch of us, we were speech. Some people called it proton or proto-tongue. What we're really talking about is the very first speech that mankind would have had or did have, right? The very first, right? There's got to have been, right, the first geezers who... What was that like? That's speech. What was the first word? And, that was an interest. There was also a hero we had, some long ago prince, who had the theory that if you got hold of little kids, very little kids is what he meant, before they're talking or anything, get them off their mums and dads, right? And because they mustn't have any adult company now. What we're going to do is put them all together, a whole bunch of them together. We're not going to be cruel, but we are going to wall them up. And have a trough of milk and buttons thrown in and all that. But his theory was that if they just grew up together like that, they would grow up naturally speaking Hebrew. He had a shot at it. Regrettably, that didn't happen. What happened was they all died. But he was a hero, because that was terrific, He had enough to have a shot at it. But most of all, we were inspired by the concept of the lost vowel. And you don't hear a lot about the lost vowel these days, and I was hunting to find some reference to it somewhere, so I streamed it, and I came across it. It's in this, if you want to read a little bit about the lost vowel. This is a Georges Perec's novel called in the original La Disparition, yeah? And it's a whole novel that Georges Perec wrote without ever using the letter E. He used only words that don't contain the letter E. Even something as remarkable is Gilbert Adair has translated it into English without using any word that contains the letter E. This kind of writing, or talking if you can do it, is called lipogrammatic or lipography. It's writing under a constraint. And reading it is weird. I mean, they manage it, you see, but I mean, it's like, that makes you walk weird while you're reading it. Like the English world, it's incredible, right? I mean, and what happens in the original French thing is that they're in a library and they start taking out famous bits of French literature, and but they're all different now. They're all got E-less words, right? I don't mean they cut the E out, they find alternative words, right? And obviously Gilbert Adair reckoned that they wouldn't be famous enough to us, those French ones. So he's got other stuff, and he's I don't know what you call it, transmoded the whole of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, which contains 640 E's, right? I just thought we'd stop there, because when somebody does something as brilliant as this, it kind of makes me cry a bit. Anyway, at the back of it, right, there's stuff. The E's are back for the last 2 pages, and there's a kind of stuff here that the chap who's just gone through a whole English novel would enjoy to read. And here's a bit here, and it's about the unknown vowel. The unknown vowel is by Jean Tardieu, I think. The unknown vowel. I have studied the phonemes of every language, past and present. I've followed vocalic sounds on their secular journeys. I have hearkened across the ages to the roar of the A, the whistle of the I, the bleat of the E, the hoot of the U, and the snores of the O. And yet I realise that I still anticipate the unknown vowel. The vowel of vowels that will contain all others, that will solve all problems, that will take all of a man's breath to pronounce by a monstrous distension of the jaws, as though combining in a single cry the yawn of boredom, the howl of hunger, the moan of love, and the rattle of death. When I have found it, creation itself will be swallowed up, and nothing will remain, gentlemen, nothing but the unknown vowel. And that was our intention in the Hainault Forest Sea Scout hut, right? We were going to find the lost vowel, the unknown vowel, and wind up the universe. Finish the wretched thing off, right? Now, there were more turned up for this do than we'd anticipated. Some had clearly come to mock. I mean, like, for example, we had the whole of the first 11 cricket team had come. Fortunately, we had... Who turned up was Ralph Blashwitt. That's Neville Blashwitt's father, you know, and he probably went in an espionage chap, and he was absolutely terrific, Ralph. And he arrived in, what you call a Ruritanian tea cone suit. And Ralph gave a little talk about so-called primitive peoples and how they cleanse themselves with sound. It turns out, with inner sound, you can... with inner sound, you can get any organ, any bone, any part of you to vibrate, right? Like, you can vibrate away tumours and all kinds of illnesses if you can find your inner sounds, right? And it kind of goes like that. Why am I doing this round my ears? I'll tell you, because if you get to try this when you get home, you need a partner, right? Go hunting your inner sounds out for your health. I'm telling you how to live longer here. Now, if you've got a partner, you're both hunting for your inner sounds, it can come that the sounds, well, I don't know what happens, coalesce or something, and you get, it's like happens in the air. I mean, and it's objective, everyone hears it. You get like a glissandi of bells. Anyway, it's just what the doctor ordered, this one. like Ralph's lecture, go, so we now had 30 geezers in the scout hut. Oh, man, there's nothing else you want to be doing once you get going, you know. You know, and people look really mad, you know, like a nightmare. It's like a nightmare and back. So this was kind of a hunt for the unknown vowel, a damn good hunt it was. As you see, we didn't find it. Then we're going to move on. You're going to like speech now. Well, I mean, where actually, you know, in all the possibilities, were they producing that first language? It might have been a clicking one. What you find out quite quickly is that you can communicate, you know, some simple desire. You can communicate through gibberish, but I wouldn't call that a language. If you're going to find any kind of language, you're going to have to go on some time, some hours. But I would say it must be about the 5th or 6th hour we'd found a language. Found a language. Was it Earth speech? I should not think so. But it was kind of an agreement, you know, it's extraordinary. And that's when the debates began. A fierce debate. What were these debates about? Well, I don't know. It seemed to me that what we were debating was, you know how in the whole universe given the whole universe, there are still more things which don't exist than which do exist. 'Twas of them, I think, we spoke, you know. And maybe it would make a possibility that this practice that we'd wandered into, there was some likelihood we might invoke one or two of these so far absent things into being. And it's going to be shortly, if you follow my instruction, that people will start going through the wall, going through their walls. See what I mean? And you can tell when they've gone through the wall, and you can tell when you've gone through the wall. Because when you've gone through the wall, everything is funny. And I don't mean just a few things, I mean everything is funny. You've gone through the wall. And I don't mean just passably amusing, I mean like kind of funny that might kill you, that kind of. And you're aware how utterly arbitrary everything is, everything. It is arbitrary. Nothing has to be like this. And also, like, you can see that nothing would be likely, absolutely nothing at all. It's kind of like, but this should be this. I mean, this is a very weird kind of this, isn't it? That there's this, that there's this. I mean, the reason, the way I got through the wall, everyone had their own story about how they got through the wall, you know, they all seem to be logical in a kind of way. What had happened to me was I saw that little Nina Plashwick, the little kid, you know, she'd been left with us by her dad, Ralph Plashwick, little Nina. She'd be aged about 4 3/4. And I saw that she was laughing dangerously. You know, and the awful thought of, you know, Ralph Plashwick finding his daughter died of laughing, you know. I better go and do something. But when I got over to Helbert, I thought of Ralph Plashwick finding his daughter dead of laughter. I thought it was so funny. And I was laughing with his hands, you know, through the wall. And when you're through the wall, you know, in an awful, painful way, things become incredibly clear that weren't before. You know what I mean? Now, it was clear to me, for example, that we are not descended from apes. We're descended from a bald-headed rat. This is real long ago, time of the dinosaurs, Pleistocene period, a bald-headed rat. And that bald-headed rat is conscious, that rat. It knows, and it knows, and it knows, and it's going to evolve several ways. It's going to evolve into the bear, the wolf, the pig, the lemur, the monkey, ape, and us. And as bald-headed rats, we wiped out the dinosaurs by scampering up them and pooing in their ears. And what consciousness is, it's simply a degree of complexity and complication sufficient to make the possessor aware that it has importance, purpose, and meaning, but insufficiently complex for it to be able to work out what this purpose and meaning is. Which, if you're through the wall, is perfectly clear. We are here for the entertainment of depraved gods. But importance prevents us from seeing that. Importance is the spine and the structure of the human comedy. Importance. Only the pygmies have, I think, the culture of importance avoidance, of non-importance, you know, and their culture hasn't changed for 15,000 years. They come from a much clearer, kindlier, bald-headed mouse line. They never included any dinosaur ears. I don't know. So, I mean, possibly I'll sentimentalise. I mean, the damn hands of the elephant killed. Anyway, I was there to the pygmies. Now, you imagine now I've got pretty much 30 people. It's how come the sadness comes in? It's because it's okay when you're through the wall. It's terrific on the other side of the wall. That's really the best place to be. But you're kind of aware, seeks in an awareness of that poor bugger on the other side of the wall, you know. And it became the form to laugh on one side of your face and weep on the other. And how close together can you get them? Can you do both at once? You can. You can. It's only for an instant. It's a one-off instant of time. You can do it. What happens, though, when you get them together, is you forget the basics. You forget how to pump blood. You forget how to breathe. It comes back to you. And as you go through, what kind of coming back, I suppose you'd call it, right? You leave all the old shit behind. I mean, what I mean is, you have a personal evacuation. Some what a stuff is going to come through every orifice you've got at that moment. And then you're through. Maybe it's important what you see as you come through. I was fortunate what I saw was the brilliant 4 3/4-year-old face of little Nina Pratchett. And going through the wall makes it interesting getting home because they're not going to let you on the buses. When I got home, it was really quite late and I crept in. But my smell woke my father up. There's another thing that we didn't hold with much at school, and that was having to go and cheer the first 11s on, you know, with a visiting team came. But one time it was quite good one Wednesday afternoon. And that was, it followed the coming of the seagulls. Seagulls had started to fly all over inland Essex, herds and flocks of them. And Neville had caught a couple with sardine-baited fish lines dangling from a box kite. And for a lad in his very early teens, he really was an accomplished vivisectionist. His inquiry into these birds led him to declare that seagulls can't fart. So when we headed off down to the match to cheer on our first 11 cricket team, we had with us some bread, but it wasn't regular bread. I don't know what he'd done to it. Bicarbonate of soda, is it? Something like that. It was in the bread, right? And there we were, and there's our team. Our team was fielding, right? And then we see the seagulls. Here come the seagulls, right? And there was kind of her speech carrying on round the pitch. Quite subtle, but we were aware that our lads had heard it. Flash with me, and slinging some bread. They're really good at catching bread in the air, so you go, boy. And then the first of these seagulls blasts apart in mid-air. You know, that's a fishy, feathery mucker. And there's one lad we got, he was fielding now, Seagull blew up one. And he had an evacuation. And his evacuation brought in another one over there. It was like our team going down like dominoes. Quite a domino effect, actually, you know, and doubly risible, given the white stuff that you have to wear for cricket. There was an inquiry. And the whole school had to be assembled. And the headmaster complained of an outbreak of Montanism at Wednesday's match. And nobody, not even the Plashwits, had heard of the word Montanism. First of all, it was extraordinary that there was a word for what we'd done. It would actually be 44 years until I actually heard exactly what Montanism is. Anyway, there you go. Anyway, as a result of Montanism, the outbreak of Montanism, the following got banned in our school. The speaking of pidgin, or any other voodoo language. All ventriloquial studies had to cease. Sir, yes. Does that include gastromancy? Yes. And glossolalia, or speaking in tongues? Yes, Plashwit. Sir, but glossolalia, or the gift of tongues, could mean that the Holy Ghost is with us. Headmaster said he'd risk it. The speaker requests an interval.
Ken Campbell, The Seekers podcast, was produced and presented by Daisy Campbell and David Bramwell, with kind permission from the Ken Campbell estate. Music was by Horton Jupiter. It was funded by Arts Council England.